By the way, I put the pitcher of drinking water up in the freezer just so it'll get cool. So anybody wants it, you can help yourself. It's up there. Okay. I got the word that that Sir Arthur has something to say to us, so we're gonna let that happen because he has some kind of an address. I'm assuming having to do with the topic, but you really can't second guess them. So we have nothing to do with it. You know, could you turn that on, please, and just aim it at me? Would you? Yeah, and just kind of turn it my way. Can you maybe yeah, turn, yeah, and a little more, and then like maybe incline it up a little bit. Yeah, thanks. There you go. Thanks. Okay. Here we go. Okay. You've all done the same thing. That is to say, putting on a coat of flesh. Behold, you sit in them now, don't you? Good afternoon. I judge by the slant of the rays of the sun, not having access to a timepiece. Long ago I ceased carrying about my little pocket watch. I'm beyond that now. Well, my dear friends, let us dive into this little tart, shall we? Our dessert, if you will. It wasn't so long ago, as one would count time, that a great cosmic council did decree that the knowledge of one's previous embodiments was essential if one was to accelerate spiritually. And that is to say that the decree included the release, if you will, of that knowledge straight away into the atmosphere of the planet. In other words, as of that moment, which again has been a bit of time, approximately 2 years if you should want to calculate it in linear fashion, then of course since then it's been almost like piped in, you know, like the soundtrack of the earth, that all should come to know something of who they've been, where they've been, and the fact that they've been at all. That this isn't the one and only. that they must needs think of themselves in dimensional fashion, as in terms of the past, the present, and of course even the future. And so it is, my friends, that in a sense, you see, I bring it to your attention that you might observe that you yourselves are in the very act of observance of this great edict or decree. In other words, you're all being quite obedient by coming this day and studying of this topic. The great ones would not have it otherwise. Soon it shall come to pass that those naysayers who insist on saying, no, it doesn't exist, no such thing, and all that, shall be, well, I'm afraid, the point of ridicule. What will be so commonly understood and accepted as the one and only way one can explain the vicissitudes of life, the strange things that seem to occur that can only be explained in that way. So you see, you are in a sense ahead of the lot, so to speak, by having the good sense to investigate it for yourselves. Furthermore, in that you have put forth the effort and are here, what shall occur is that this effort shall be multiplied for you. Meaning, from this day forward, you'll find almost an accumulative effect. Your knowledge, your memory, if you will, of past times, your own in particular, and often those of others, will start to come rather spontaneously. So, you see, my dears, you're all on the right track. Let's put it like that. Yes, certainly so. Now, I don't want to confuse you, but I shall say this. A good friend of mine by the name of Seth, some time back, alerted many of a whole other way of looking at this thing, and that is that it's all occurring at the same time. That, as a matter of fact, there is no real past or future as such, any more than one can realize that one is constantly in all of it simultaneously. Now, I don't want to throw you a curve, you understand? Again, for some, the concept of reincarnation itself is enough. You need not think in terms of, and it's all occurring at once, good Lord. I'm afraid it's a bit much for me. For a brain that is blood-starved because the blood's in my belly, taking care of my food. So you see, I don't expect it to become something you immediately grasp. But I do plant the seed, don't I? Too late now. It's done. But yea, I say that it will sprout and grow of its own accord. And it shall not confuse you at all. If one were to continue, however, in that particular theory, one would have to conclude that all things are interactive. Your past affects your present, affects your future, and vice versa. There's truth to that. I but state it that you might come to know that there's far more anent this very subject that is even written about in most books. By the by, we have here today, and she agreed to, you might say, be a attendant, if you will, but I see that she's done more than attendant. A good friend of mine as well that I've come to know since her return to spirit, and that would be the very medium through which my friend Seth did speak, known as Jane Roberts. And Jane is here, quite curious at all that goes on, and she has already been jumping about, and helping a few of you, putting thoughts in your heads and what, specifically when you're under the towel, as you shall be again, and then again she'll this time work with others whom she did not work with the first time. Come to know then that you're all of you well attended, quite, and that in the next session that is shortly to ensue, what we will suggest is that you seek in a slightly different fashion, and it shall be this. Seek to recall a life that's been for you the most empowering, that's been for you one that has been as a quantum leap in your spiritual evolutionary journey. And, mind you, though for some of you it shall take the form, indeed, of actual memory, perhaps visions and what, we would suggest in this case that you begin just by having a sense of it, a feeling of it. You don't need to expect the visuals, at least not immediately. Rather get a sense, A, that it's even occurred, for it must and has, and B, that you have memory of it in your cellular structure. How is that? If this body was not present, well, it's that the cellular structure is, of course, created by you, isn't it? So it would have the hallmark or the signature of what you know, who you are, where you've been. Dear day, if you like. So then, friends, come to know this, that what shall occur from this point forward is that not only shall you find it an easier task to delve into the past when it is a good idea, when necessary and when useful, but also you now become, as it were, broadcasting stations for the same. Yeah. You might almost say you're being saturated by a frequency that is being held here this very day for this very purpose. And you shall become permeated with it. Indeed, you already are. And as it percolates through your system, it will then exude out of you as a fragrance of the most rare variety, the fragrance of soul recall. So in that sense, friends, as you go forth, you become now those that are catalysts for the recall of others. You see what a lovely service you can and do and shall provide without even saying a word in many cases. But again, realize that by cosmic law, though you might gain a glimpse here and there of the past embodiment of another, that really, unless they ask, unless they express interest, it's really not the thing to do to volunteer it. Not usually. Unless you are specifically prompted to do it, and I should think you'd want to wait for the third prompting of that one. Eh? Not the first thing that pops in your head. For I tell you, we find among so many, the fascination, of course, of the phenomena. And so, therefore, one almost must bridle one's jaw. Button the lip, I think they like to say. Eh? Rather crude, but it serves a purpose, doesn't it? Means, do be mindful of those things that you let fly out your mouth. For they can do more harm than good, really. You may not know when another is ready or very unready to delve into that area. And though I've stated at the onset of this little monologue that it's a decree from on high that all shall, I dare say that shall occur in each one's own individual time frame. And you may not be the one to determine that. So you see, friends, all is afoot. All is what it is. Now, as I look about the room here, I note that most of you were present when the Master Jesus last walked and graced us with his presence on earth. I also note a predominance of people here who have been reincarnated, and I say I don't know that there's one exception, the Native American Indians. You've all been these. Interestingly enough, I note that you've all been British as well. Very good. I feel quite at home. Tea, anyone? Tea? I should go forward and say as well that you've, except for, I believe, 3, all lived lives here in beautiful Hawaii. So you've all had this lovely place to call home previous to this. And I believe there might just be 2 exceptions here. As to the rest, you'll all come back again. 2 need not, though you might elect to. I shall go further and say this much, that when you again take the mode of prying into the times previous, which you shall be doing, I suppose, presently, do so with a sense of being on a mission indeed. That mission, obviously one of enlightenment, but certainly one that does not end with you, but includes the rest of humanity. In other words, think of yourselves as pioneers, if you like. Think of yourselves as research agents, and that anything and everything that you glean this day shall not only become a part of you, but a part of the culture and society which you grace. All things you do contribute to the mass whole. Every action, every thought, word, and deed. So therein lies, of course, the responsibility. What shall I contribute, to the brain pool, as it were? We would also tell you that there are two of you here, and I'm not about to point you out, who are living in another body, physically, on Earth at this time. In other words, you're just half of you. Your other half, literally, is elsewhere. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Continuing, you do want me to continue, don't you? Well, one doesn't know, you can't overstay your welcome. I should say this as well, that you've all been royalty, literally, in different countries at different times. Every one of you here, not one exception. So think of that as well. Not so much for the so-called pomp and circumstance, for the glory of it, for that is always relative, but rather that you might know that you've already elected to sit in a position of absolute authority. A word from you and heads would roll literally, or lives would be saved and certainly altered no matter what you did. So consider that you've stepped into that role of responsibility. Spiritually speaking, it's no better to be a king than a pauper, really. As a matter of fact, one often learns more as a pauper. But you see how it is. You must get away from the relative opinions of the earth plane. Get this quite clear and frankly understand it, my dears. It's almost unfortunate to have to admit that it's been the lives that have caused you the most pain, the most turmoil, the most suffering indeed, that have also caused you the most spiritual growth. Unfortunately, I say, because I've not liked it any more than you have. Believe me. But I must admit that there is wisdom behind it all. One more thing, ere I've got to fly, and it is this, that you've all switched genders many times. So whatever body you might be in now, you've been in the opposite, to be sure. And that is something that we shall also ask you to be watching for and investigate, that you might come to understand that if you can tap into that life, and there's usually been more than one, in fact in every case, it would help you understand the opposite gender a little bit better. There seems to be this gap, isn't there? Well, we got men all the time saying they don't understand women. Lots of women think they understand men all too well. How's that? How's that? Perhaps there's truth in both. I would say that you've been the opposite gender, that you might come to understand that the soul, by its nature, is androgynous. But choosing the body it does for its own purposes. You'll tend to prefer one sex or the other, that's true. So it isn't necessarily the body you're in, but it very well could be. So it's all a matter of personal preference. Some have said, generally erroneously, that those that are homosexual are the ones who've not been able to make the transition successfully. That's poppycock. I dare say the medium himself once believed that till he got enlightened. In other words, it isn't that. That implies a mistake almost, doesn't it, on the part of the soul? Oh, I just can't quite make that shift, you know. What'll I wear? Nonsense, nonsense. I say that those that are homosexual have chosen it quite deliberately, simply because it is one of the most complex lessons you can learn on this earth plane. Oh yes, it isn't easy, in case you hadn't given it any thought. I must say the word gay, a bit of a misnomer. For God knows that all those brave souls, and I certainly call each and every one of them that, who happen to be wearing that identity in this life, are not going through an easy time of it. Think in terms of being, let us say, a minority in a culture that despises minorities. That's what you're looking at. So, if any of you have got feelings against your brethren who happen to be carrying that burden, kindly lay it down. You know not what suffering these souls go through. And the same would go for a minority person living in a culture that hates minorities. Believe me, you can't know until you've been. Once you've been, you never again have it in your heart to be unkind in that sense. So let us come to understand, my dears, that all of us are brethren beneath the flesh and certainly in the spirit, and as such it behooves us all to be so compassionate, so open-minded, and so slow to judge another, even as we should be equally slow to judge ourselves, for we are rarely in the position to do so with any degree of accuracy. It's all you can do, my dears, to walk through your lives with heads held high and feeling love for all. If you can do that, oh my, are you making progress? Yes, indeed. Think in terms of the fact that as you descend from the great realm of spirit, to take incarnation, you must pass through various levels, belts, dimensions, and each one will put, as it were, another garment upon you. So by the time the little babe is born, I tell you that that one is already wearing, shall I say, layers upon layers of matter, which get in the way of the soul light exhibiting itself. In other words, you're all of you under handicap, every one of you here, purposely, by choice, but under handicap indeed. So you see why you really need to be quite slow about judging yourselves, and again, much less others. You can't know really how much you are doing and accomplishing, nor shall you until you regain to spirit. And my very last comment shall be to touch upon the phenomena that occurs in every country, and it is this: the soul that chooses to take over a body when that body is already inhabited by another soul who does not want to be there. One soul walks out, one soul walks in. Quite real, my dears, quite real. Oh yes. I tell you that it occurs, well, constantly. It's occurring right now, as we speak. So, when you encounter one who seems to be changing rather radically, don't expect them to recall necessarily the shift. But when you see one that does that, someone who perhaps had lived a life, perhaps not of the greatest or what appeared to be the highest situation, perhaps a bit disgruntled, perhaps now good, now not, and then generally after some type of a shift that takes, shall we say, its shape, I would say, during a crisis that soul that is leaving is elected to go through, then you see a different person. The new one, generally more agile, generally more intelligent, generally a bit psychic, where the other one might not have been at all, generally more evolved, kinder, sweeter, and all in all, a better person for the most part. Mind you, when you see a shift and it's for the worse, you're not looking at a walk-in. Tell you that. You're looking at a weakling. It's a whole different thing. Someone who just gave up from being the best they could be, and now they're deteriorating. Pity, but I suppose we've all had to do that at least once, to see the folly in it. So, friends, come to know that many other mysteries that surround you, you yourselves are mysteries. And towards this end, I encourage you then to seek, to search, to research, to delve, to question, to intuit, to wonder, to know and to love. For it is in the midst of all of these that you find your essence, that thing that you at last come to know is your true self. Only you then can say, I am. God bless you, my dears. It's been so lovely joining you. And watch how, as we progress through this afternoon, insight upon insight will come to you. Unstop your ears and hear the sweet music of the ages. You are eternal, immortal, and infinite. And that is cause to rejoice. Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thank you. Thank you. There's a door right there I'd never seen, and I saw Sir Arthur leaving the room. He looked to be like walking up a staircase. And he stopped and he turned around and he said, he goes, Hakalani indeed. And he went like that, and then he turned around and okay. Well, got, yeah, I heard him, yeah. I like that. I hear it all now, pretty much all of them. Rarely know. The only time I don't is when it's like personal. Sometimes in personal sessions I don't. I'm assuming I don't need to know, or for privacy or whatever. But yeah, it is. So, well, he sure covered a lot of territory, didn't he? Leave hardly any stone unturned. Is there anything we haven't talked about? It's like it's A to Z. Jeez. I have to regroup here for a minute. Talk amongst yourselves.
I think you're one of those. You're one of those. We're all infected,
Okay.
I didn't know anything like that could happen. Where he said half, a person can be half of the body and then another body. I don't know.
So that's like your twin flame he's talking about, right?
No. I think he was referring to a very advanced soul can live two lives at once by being in two different bodies at once. Certain advanced souls can do that.
Oh, there's one here.
Yeah, apparently. I think he said there were two, didn't he? Two. Two. So in other words, what is here is half of the soul, or aspect of the soul, and then the other one's somewhere else doing something else. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That's where
No, I can't so much of it.
At one point, they do quite
Okay. I just got the prompting, so now I was waiting to see where I should take it. I was specifically given the feeling not to prepare anything for this seminar, and I didn't, nothing. And so I just, I'm just kind of going with the flow, listening and whatever I get. What I'm supposed to do now is I'm supposed to actually go to each one of you and tell you something that I'm going to be told for you about your own past. And then we're going to take a very short break, very short one, not long, just long enough for me to get the water and all that going. And then we're going to go through another regression session. Okay, here's what we'll do. When I come to you, I would like you to tell me not your current name, but a name you have had before. This is not a test. Right? And here's how you do it. It's real simple. Whatever name comes to you. It could be male, female. You heard what he said about the gender switching thing anyway. So you see what I'm saying? In other words, I'm not saying that you need to like sit there and rack your brain. Let's see what it was. No, don't even try. Don't even try. In fact, try not. Unless it comes to you as you're waiting, which is very likely. But if it doesn't, and nothing comes to you, the minute I come to you and say, "What's your name?" Just give me a name, but not the one you wear now, a different one. Just let it come to you. Any name that comes to you, that's it. Because trust that if it doesn't come to you spontaneously, if you don't burp it up, somebody's going to tell you. Because all of you have people with you. So, okay, so get it. So, what's your name?
Mary or Maria, depending on which country you're in.
Okay, good. Mary or Maria? Okay, good. All right. Interesting, that name, because it is a key to the life I'm supposed to look into, and it has to do with the Master Jesus and his mother, and the fact that you knew her, and that you, I actually believe were a distant relative of hers, therefore of his, and that in that life you were slow to accept what everybody was saying about him. Who he was or supposedly was. You were definitely a little more, I don't know about all this. You just took your time with that one. Kind of interesting. I'm kind of catching an image of something, at that time, and it's very interesting. And yet, when you finally did have the realization, I believe because he came to you after he had left the body. And he basically convinced you. And after that, you were probably one of the most deeply devoted people. Not not to him. Because one thing that's not well understood is that in that time and in that life, it wasn't about him. It was what he came talking about. It was that. It has become such a personality cult, this whole Christian thing. Really, it's just, I really feel a lot of these people really miss the boat, you know, because it was never about him, and he never made it about him. In fact, he constantly deflected that. But he did say that the things that he was here to remind us of, and that was the word he used a lot, were the things that we in turn would be and should be reminding other people of, which is how to be loving and sweet and giving and forgiving and that kind of thing. It was so simple. The message was so simple. And there was more than one occasion when he would do a so-called miracle, and people would, oh, you know, you'd hear this murmur when things would happen. And then he would often quickly turn around and he would say, it was done with love, that's all. He would say, it was done with love, and he'd look at each one of us, it was done with love. He would just look like that, and he'd look you right in the eye. Meaning, you know, that there's no mystery here. Love enough, and you'll do the same. That was the message. It was always like that. It wasn't like, yes, pretty good, huh? You know, none of that. So, that's what I know about you.
Thank you. It was very nice.
Who? No. We're still recording. Okay. What's your name?
Agatha.
Agatha. You had a lifetime in Europe, and you were quite a mystic in that lifetime. And you left such an impression on people around you that the Catholic Church decided to make you a saint. Saint Agatha. The Catholic Church will canonize people based on their own criteria. And you have to have so many miracles and so many this and so many that, all the little things that they go by. And what they don't get is that that was just one lifetime. You know? Just because someone was a certain person, maybe even a saint so-and-so, that doesn't mean that they're forevermore that saint. You know, you're not Saint Agatha anymore. Or are you? You're not. I mean, you're you. Yeah. But actually that person, now it might be interesting for you to go into that and check it out. She lived in Europe. And the things that happened around her, the phenomenon, there was some, was not really brought on by her, if you know what I mean. She didn't do it, but they attributed to her, as always. There's this heavy idolatry number always happening here with the what so-called Christian. I would say so-called because, as far as I'm concerned, it seems so strange that they should use that phrase in relation to themselves, considering the fact that the one that they claim to follow, they're so, I think, I'll have to be very bold and say ignorant of, as to his true nature, as to the true nature of that state of consciousness, the Christ consciousness, you know. Anyway, I'm trying to preach to you about that because I know you know the difference, you know. But you might look into the life of Saint Agatha, okay? Because it was yours.
I know, why are you talking to me?
Yeah, the church doesn't understand. They think it sounds like, you know, Saint so-and-so is, they have like over 400 saints as far as I know. And again, according to them, that saint is still up in heaven, still being Saint so-and-so, you know. What, how long? Forever? What about evolution? Now she's in Honolulu, listen. I got news for you guys. It's okay. What's your name?
Rebecca.
Ah. Master Jesus time. You witnessed apparently the much written about event called the baptism of Jesus at the River Jordan. His cousin, John, did it. He saw him coming. He saw him coming far away. And he totally stopped what he was doing. He didn't know that the elder brother had come back from his travels. He knew he would come back, and he was already feeling the waves, of consciousness that were coming. And he kept talking about him, and he figured if he just kept talking about him, enough people would be ready, which some were. But the day that happened, it was a very hot day. He just dropped. He was using a cup that looked a lot like a coconut cup, but it wasn't. It looked like one. And he just went like that. He just dropped it like that, and he sank to his knees and somewhat submerged himself. And then he came up and looked again, and there was his cousin walking up, and he began to. And you were there, and you knew what was happening, because you had heard him talk. You knew you were just waiting, and you turned and looked, and you thought, who is this man? I've never seen him before. And he approached, and then you really knew when John said, when he came and just stood right in front of John, and he bowed his head, and John said, oh no. He said, you should baptize me. And then he said, John, he said, do what you are here to do. And then so John just kind of said, okay. So then he went like that, and then there was a commotion that happened in the higher atmosphere. There was a phenomenal commotion that happened. And different people heard different things. Later when we recounted, different people had different versions of it, But you definitely had yours, because you were there too, and you saw that. Yeah. What's your name? What is it? Kawaii, I see. No, we probably don't want that kitty in. Yeah, let's take her out. Yeah, thank you. Oh, I see the door was open. Yeah, I'm sorry, we can't have that. Oh, I see. Well, you know what? Can we have that fan? The fan right there. Yeah, I know, because you all are right over by the sun. I'm sorry. Yeah, you are. Yeah, thank you. Because they're sweating over here. Yeah, would you? Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you could just, because maybe you could plug the fan in right nearby you somewhere, and there's a plug over that way too, if you like. There's one there, and there's one there, yeah. And I'm sure you could find one somewhere around there, yeah. Yeah. If you want to move in, Don, you can, come in a little, where it's cooler. Okay. Well, it won't be too surprising to tell you where you lived, right? Your name was actually longer than that, but I'm not going to try and say it. Okay, but that's how it started. And you were, at the time that I'm being shown, a fairly old woman. And you lived in the mountains of Kauai, of course, up where the Wailua River is, up that road. You lived almost at the very top, Mount Waialeale, right at the very top. Not all the way, but And you didn't come down very often, but you tended herbs. You were like a healer. La'au lapa'au, that was what it was. Yeah, you were a healer. And you had certain herbs up there that apparently didn't grow very many other places, if at all. So every now and then, with certain conditions, people had to seek you out. And the interesting thing was that there was a belief that the gods would cause someone to have that condition to have to come to see you. Because when they would, you would not only give them the herb, but you also gave them a lot more. The herb would always heal it. But with it, you'd come through with a whole lot of other stuff that they needed, you see? And that was a real interesting thing. Yeah. And you were very, very close with Lono. That was the god that you were really close with. Yeah. And Lono would come to you very directly. Yeah. And on occasion, Lono would speak right through you to the people who would come. And you were his haka. You were his medium. So it's real interesting that that was the case. Have you spent any time on Kauai much? Really? You might want to go. Go up right where the cocoa palms used to be down there in that road. You'll know where to go. Okay. Okay. What's your name?
Actually, I heard two names. One was John and one was Celine.
Huh, okay. So I got to take my pick? Is that what it is? Okay. No wonder. You were twins.
Oh!
What we talking about, splitting up into twos and all that? You did that. But it was a very unusual kind of twins, fraternal, of course. And these twins they couldn't really be apart because they were in fact the same soul, you. It was an experiment, literally, that one of the masters, or some of them, were doing. The masters experiment with us, through us, but always with our consent. Versus